I'm curious to know if you've ever had the experience of scrolling on social media. Maybe you're doing some relaxing doom scrolling at the end of your workday or before you get up out of bed in the morning, and you see some information about a group that you're a part of or a group that you're affiliated with that flies in the face of what you know about that group. Or maybe you see some information about somebody in public life you either admire or really dislike that goes against the opinion that you hold of that person. It's a really interesting moment, particularly if it's about a group that you are in fact a part of, or an organization that you're a part of, or something that you participate in very closely. Seeing information that doesn't jive with any of your experience of what that is. I had this experience recently, and I looked online for a few minutes about kind of what's the world saying, what's the internet saying about human design these days. I don't do this a ton. I tend to get my information directly from the source, that is the International Human Design School. There's the definitive book of human design that Ruhu put out, reader trainings with Jenna Zoe, which is one step removed, I guess. At any rate, so I don't tend to just Google human design things and look online. But it was interesting to see somebody had written, I believe it was on Reddit, of course, there was a thread in this conversation going about the fact that human design is a cult. And I thought, oh my gosh, how interesting. I had no idea. I should probably check this out and see what it's about. Is human design, in fact, a cult? I think this is a very interesting take, given that human design is, quote, the science of differentiation, and cults are very much interested in keeping folks in line, as homogenized, as similar to each other as possible. But let's walk through it. Let's talk about it and see whether human design is or isn't a cult. As the baseline for determining if something is a high control group, or if a group is using an authoritarian control model to keep members in line, a model that's super helpful is the BITE model. This was developed by Dr. Stephen Hassan, but I will link his website and this information in the description so you can go take a look at it for yourself. But what the BITE model stands for are all the ways that a group might be controlling someone. So the B stands for behavior control, the I stands for information control, the T stands for thought control, and the E stands for emotional control. I find this to be a really helpful framework to reference the information that I'm getting, or if I am joining a new group, am I seeing any of these kinds of red flags, this sort of thing. To drill down a little bit more, behavior control has to do with what it says, behavior, what you can or can't do, who you can and can't do it with, what you must do in order to remain a part of the group, or what you must not do in order to remain a part of the group. And this is also using coercive means to enforce these rules. The I stands for information control, and this is withholding and or controlling what information is available to someone. Knowledge is power, and so holding some information back, holding back ideas that are contrary to what the group believes, is a way to keep everybody in line and make sure that nobody's asking questions. This can also be limiting access to non-cult information, including not talking to former members. This is why a lot of groups that are considered cults or culty groups will totally say that once a member has left, they're excommunicated, you can't talk to them anymore, you can't affiliate with them anymore, because they're very dangerous to maintaining those ideals of the group. And then along with this goes this emphasis of outsider versus insider thinking and a very strong us versus them mentality. Then this is a really nice way that brings us into thought control. It's interesting the way that this is written. Stephen Hassan breaks this out, but the common thread in what he writes that I found is an emphasis on cognitive distortions. Cognitive distortions are thought patterns that are just what they sound like. They distort reality. And so a lot of times we use them as coping mechanisms. They're not always bad, but they can be certainly maladaptive and not helpful. But some examples are black and white thinking. It's either this or that. There's no gray area in between. There's also wishful thinking. Oh, it would be really nice if this thing would happen. Magical thinking goes along in there too, thinking that, oh, there's some magical force that's going to make everything what I want it to be. justification, rationalization. We all do this to some degree. Thought control really emphasizes these kinds of thought distortions. There's also a forbidding of questioning of the group and or its leaders, and there's also this use of thought-stopping techniques so that if somebody's going on a train of thought that is going to lead them away from the dominant ideology of the group, nope, can't go there, can't think about that. And this can take a number of different forms. And then there's also emotional control. So this can show up in a number of different kinds of ways, but it can be limiting emotional expression and then finally, the E we come to is emotional control, and this looks like one of a number of different things, but primarily either limiting emotional expression. You can't have anger, you can't be sad, you have to be happy all the time, bright, shiny faces, smiling, this sort of thing, regardless of whatever is going on, or emphasizing a really wide emotional range. So bringing people through the range of really high highs, and we hear this in the pop culture and popular parlance about love bombing, and then bringing folks to really low lows, so really intense guilt and shame. Oh my God, you did this thing, it was so bad, how could you? And really emphasizing that and bringing folks into that really low. In addition to that, there can be a promotion of feelings of fear, guilt, worthlessness, etc. So you get the common theme here, right? It's really about control, keeping really high control of what somebody is doing, what they're thinking about, what they're feeling, and the information that they have access to. Over the last few years, like in my awareness, like over the last 5 years or so, the lingo of cults and culty groups has really come into vogue. There's a ton of books out there. There's a ton of documentaries out there. As I was thinking this through for myself, I was thinking of like NXIVM and the LuLaRoe documentary and the Institute of Basic Life Principles that was highlighted on Shiny Happy People, the Rajneeshis, and then also I know there was a documentary about Bikram and Bikram yoga and all this sort of thing. And so you can find this in a lot of different places for sure. A group doesn't have to be a full-on cult to be a little bit culty. And as an aside, I love the podcast A Little Bit Culty with Sarah Edmondson, and I think it's Nippy Ames is his last name. They do a really good job talking about like, hey, this may not be a full-on cult, but there's some tactics here and some dynamics here that are potentially very concerning that we really want to kind of be aware of and stay away from. Groups exist all over the place that are coercive to the point of harm, be it physical, emotional, psychological, and or financial. I think social media often fuels this dynamic of sort of cultiness and controllingness. I think we see it in a lot of different places in our culture right now, in the United States especially. That's where I live. This is the frame of reference that I have. Looking at social media, you see there's some of this emotional control. Oh, you got to feel outraged. It's bringing you to this point of like fear and oh my gosh, what's going to happen? And I can't believe this. And how could they? And da. There's also this information control, right? You'll get more of what you engage with. You'll get more of what you've been getting. With some of the algorithms, it becomes more extreme. And we've heard about this over the last few years about like radicalization on both sides. Neither side is immune. But radicalization one way or the other, because people sort of fall into the rabbit hole one way or the other on like YouTube or TikTok or whatever have you. There's also thought control. So once you're into a group on social media, or you're paying attention to a particular ideology, then this is what we think. This is what you need to think as well. And if you decide that you don't want to think that way, get out. We don't want you, and how dare you? You're a terrible person. I don't think this is true, but this is what we tend to see in these kinds of groups. And social media for sure can fuel this. There's also behavior control, right? You don't want to be shunned. And so even if somebody does have legitimate questions, they want to talk about, well, like this piece of it doesn't make sense to me. We should be talking about this. Like logically, we've hit a point where it doesn't, like this doesn't follow anymore. And so why can we not talk about this? And this is where you'll see like the thought stopping come in of like, you can't go there. We can't talk about that. You can't think about that. And so, there is that behavior control of people deciding, well, I don't really want to be shunned. I don't want to be kicked out of this group. Maybe they've developed really good friendships with folks who are in their community online. And so they are like, okay, well, I guess this is just where it's at. And so there can be this sort of stuffing down of like questions and critical thought. The piece about this that is really insidious is that, and I'm talking about social media specifically, is that even though things that are online, the emotions are real. And so, in as much as you can turn off your phone and put it away, if you're engaging in these groups, if you're seeing these things show up on your feed, you're still going to have the physiological response. Emotions live in our body. And so, as you're going, it can be it feels very real and scary to potentially go against the grain in this way. Now, sort of went on a tangent there, but I think it's important to understand, what does it mean to be a cult? What does it mean to be culty? What are these high control groups really about? Because then that brings us back to human design and our original question of, is this actually a cult? Admittedly, I am biased. I love human design. I use it myself. I look at my chart periodically. I have taken classes. I've taken reader trainings. My introduction to human design came from a friend who I very much respect, and we were having a pizza lunch it was 2019, and we were having a pizza lunch after we had finished our board exams, and she pulled out her phone. She may have pulled out her computer, and she looked up, there were 3 of us there, she looked up our charts, and she was explaining to us, oh yes, this is how this all works, and the strategy and authority, and you're this type, and all this sort of thing. And I was like, that's cool and kind of interesting, but very complicated. And I had just finished school and graduated, and I had just finished this whole push to take my board exams and get through those, and I was like, I can't deal with this right now. And so I didn't think about it again until January of 2021. And we were in the middle of a family crisis, and I was waiting. There was some medical stuff going on, and I was waiting for folks to get home. And I sat at my computer just trying to distract myself, and I saw a post from Jenna Zoe. And I don't remember what exactly it was that I saw, but it sort of triggered this thing in me that was like, interesting. This seems like a good direction to take. I'm curious about this. And so it really ignited that curiosity for me. And so I started diving into human design. All the things that friend had explained to me about type, strategy, authority, how to eat for your human design type, how to structure your work life, relationships, how to navigate communication with other folks. I really dove into it. I bought, I bought a number of unofficial books about human design. And I also got the official book of human design, which is, as I said earlier, the definitive book of human design, The Science of Differentiation by Ra Uru Hu. And so I've kind of been hooked on it ever since then. And like I said, I did complete Jenna Zoe's human design reader training. I have also taken a few classes through the International Human Design School, and I am planning to do more. I then started using human design with some of my health coaching clients when we were still in the midst of 2020, 2021, and everything that went along with that. And these were young women who were really overtaken with shame. They felt dreadful about who they were for no good reason. And they felt really behind. They felt behind their peers. They were facing really impossible odds to find work, much less establishing a career that they wanted to be in. And I would sit with them on video calls, and they were just like, really just, oh my gosh, awful, like so stressed out. I would pull up their human design chart and we would walk through it. I'd explain the basics to them, and I'd watch them go like from so tense, maybe like hunched over and just like, oh, and they would just relax and open up and sit back. They also were able to verbalize the relief that they felt, that they weren't broken, that their life just happens to look a little bit different. And not only is that okay, but that might even be to their benefit and to the benefit of the folks who they care about and the folks in their community and the people around them. They also experienced a validation that the gifts and the talents that they had been downplaying, that they said, oh, this doesn't matter that I can do this. Oh, everybody does this. As we looked at their chart and we walked through it a little bit more, they got validation that those things really are important, that they have unique things to offer to the world and gifts to offer to the world and talents that matter. My experience is certainly not everyone's experience, and I'm sensitive to that. I understand that. For myself and for the clients that I have used human design with, it has been a very healing and nurturing experience to have that information to work with, and it's been supportive overall. The human design teachers that I've had are some of the least coercive folks I have ever met or learned from. I have often heard things, do this or don't. It's your call. It's your choice. It's an experiment. Give it a try. or you don't have to. It's totally fine. There's no coercion. There's no, you have to do this or else, or you have to think this way, or you don't get to use this tool. There's none of the like, do what we say, or we're going to abandon you and kick you out of the group. What can happen though, of course, and I'm curious if this is what's going on when folks say that human design is very culty or it is a cult, is that as an idea gets further from its source, the more that it can get twisted up. And if you've ever played the game of telephone as a kid, you start with one word, maybe you start with the word balloon at the very beginning, and by the end of it, we're talking about bananas. How did we get there? Ugh. From one person to the next, it changes. And this can be troublesome and difficult to manage. I went to a fundamentalist Christian elementary school and for part of my middle school, and it was not a super loving place to be. And so Christianity, if you go back to Jesus, very loving, accepting. Anger is not a bad thing, but you need to use it in the right way at the right time. Respecting people, caring for people, all these kinds of good things. The fundamentalist Christian school that I attended was very much, you need to fit into our mold. And if you don't, you're a terrible person, and how dare you? It was very shame-filled for reasons that are absurd and silly. And to me, this is an example of, fit into this box of our identity. You have to agree with our theology fully, or you're nothing to us. Now, I have also been in churches where I had doubts. And there was a time when I had just moved to the Pacific Northwest, and I was attending a Bible study group, and I had questions. I had a lot of doubts about my faith, and I was really nervous to bring those to light because of the prior experiences that I have had. Now, in this group, it was very different. They were encouraging of questions. They said, of course you have questions. Of course you have doubts. That makes total sense. Let's talk about it. Same group, ostensibly, right? All of these folks are Christian, but very different experience, and very different from one was very high control, the other was very come as you are, be who you are, ask your questions, let's think about these things, let's talk about these things. Coming back to human design, I have not come across folks who are highly controlling, who are coercive in this kind of way. They probably exist, I have no doubt. Different folks really can twist up ideas and offer interpretations of what Ra Uru Hu said, the founder of human design, and they're really incorrect. And I've read a few things and I'm like, that is not how I read this at all. And so if you are coming across anybody in the human design world who is saying this is how you have to do it, if you don't do it, you're wrong, and how dare you, and how could you think to do it any other way, and everybody else in human design is wrong, but I know what it is, I would question that. I would maybe go the other direction or get some clarification or really gather some additional information from other sources, because human design, in my experience of it, is a very warm and welcoming, spacious place to be. It's a space that invites questioning. It's a space that invites experimentation of, how do you want to do this? What makes sense? What makes sense embodied? What makes sense to your mind? Do those things match, or are they different? Why? How do we reconcile those things? Human design, as shared by Ra Uru Hu, and this is in the title of the book, is the science of differentiation. I said this at the beginning of this video, and I will say it again. The science of differentiation, meaning that people are different. We're supposed to be different. We're not all supposed to fit in the same mold. We're not all supposed to think the same way. We're not all supposed to make decisions the same way. We all have different flavors of how we approach life. And this is a good thing, because if we were all the same, my goodness, how boring. And we wouldn't get very far either individually if we all thought about things the same way, if we all did things the same way. We really need each other. And human design is lovely because it does emphasize we need each other. We need to be in community. We need to have friendships. We need to have folks who we grapple with, maybe not literally unless you're into martial arts, but we need to have people who we can intellectually grapple with, who we can approach different problems with from different directions to come up with different kinds of solutions, and maybe solutions that are better and more creative as we have worked together. If you're following your own design, we each have a very specific and embodied system to make decisions via our strategy and authority. And yours is going to feel different from mine. And that's okay. How could I possibly expect you to make decisions in the same way that I make decisions? I couldn't. It doesn't make sense. It wouldn't work. And of course, and this is the other thought that I have about why people think that human design is a cult or a little bit culty, is, it's certainly not for everyone. It is a little bit out there, I grant you. And if you're somebody who is not into this, sort of a little bit spiritual, a little bit astrology kind of thing, it's not going to be something that you're going to want to engage with, which is fine. There's not a problem with that. And that doesn't make it a cult. That just means that it's a tool, a way of thinking about things, a way of approaching the world, a way of approaching life that isn't the way that you're going to want to approach life. But if this is something that is for you, if you are interested in exploring human design a little bit more, maybe finding some of that relief that I spoke about earlier that I experienced firsthand for myself and also with the health coaching clients that I have worked with, just that deep relaxation of, it's okay. I can be who I am. There's nothing wrong with that. And maybe developing some strategies to approach life in a way that really makes sense for you, that ways to approach life that are supportive of your health and well-being rather than sort of grinding down day after day after day. Check out the website. I will have it linked in the description below. It's drkatherinehoffman.com, and I have a quick start guide to human design over there. You can also sign up and get a virtual reading. Both of these are digital products, and they come as a PDF straight to your email. And like I said, that will be linked in the description below, so you can check that out if you like. And one way or another, I wish you the absolute best. Take good care. Until next time.